Can a single prize change a whole narrative? Is it possible that a Ferrari who seemed evicted is now prepared to fight for victories thanks to Hamilton? Stay, because what we saw in Monza can be the beginning of something very big. Monza, a circuit that does not forgive. The fastest of the calendar, where the margin of error is reduced to centimeters and the tenths of a second weigh like tons. There, under the sun Lombardo, Ferrari needed more than ever to send a message. That they were not dead, that they could fight, that there was hope. And that message was not signed by any pilot. Lewis Hamilton wrote it with his handwriting. From the first contact with the asphalt in free training, the SF-25 was comfortable, agile, freed from the shackles that tied him in past races. Under conditions of low aerodynamic load, the car seemed to find its natural habitat. But the differential factor was not just the machine, it was the man. Hamilton soon marked territory. 20,117 faster turn in the first session. Behind, his partner Charles Leclerc. Ferrari in front. As in the old days, but with new protagonists. That time was not the result of an empty attempt or a fortunate return with rebufo. It was the result of a meticulous work. Of a technical adaptation that began days before, in simulator, with data that pointed to a radically different setup. Hamilton worked next to the team to refine the front balance, maximize traction in slow curves and reduce resistance in line. It wasn't just going fast, it was going comfortable. And above all, have confidence. Because that is what was clearly perceived. A Lewis Hamilton who was re-trusting his car. That pushed again in the fast areas with decision. That attacked the girls with the precision of those who know every centimeter of track. It was a brutal contrast with the live just a week before in Zandvoort, where Ferrari not only left with both cars, but showed an erratic version, disconnected, lost. Monza, on the other hand, was order, focus, execution. And at the center of that transformation, Hamilton. The British transmitted from the cabin a calm that has not been seen for a long time. It was not arrogance or excess of confidence. It was something deeper, the certainty that, finally, the work was paying fruits. Body language also spoke. In the paddock, in the garage, in each interaction with its engineer, Hamilton radiated a different energy. He smiled. But not as who celebrates a pole or a victory. He smiled as who knows that he is on the right path, which has crossed a key psychological threshold. And that, in a sport as mental as Formula One, can make all the difference. What was lived that Friday was more than a good time. It was a statement. It was not a message for Red Bull or McLaren. It was an internal message for the Scuderia and for Hamilton himself. Yes, we can. Yes, this car is speed. Yes, something big can still be built in 2025. And yes, Monza could be the turning point that everyone was waiting for. This first step, although modest in the numerical, was gigantic in the symbolic. Because when a world champion finds motivation and tools at the same time, the rest of the paddock begins to worry. And when that happens in Monza, the Tifosi roar can become a true warning echo for the rest of the grill. Ferrari did not travel to Monza to simply comply. This time, he came willing to break with the narrative that pursued him since the beginning of the season. And he did it with a bold, almost reckless play, which did not leave the interpretation margin. If they were going to fail, it would be risking everything. But if they were right, they would change the course of the season. The SF-25 was presented in the Temple of Speed with one of the most extreme aerodynamic packages that Ferrari has brought in recent years. It was not a punctual improvement. It was an integral restructuring designed exclusively to maximize aerodynamic efficiency in Monza. And that, in Formula One language, means one thing: reduce minimal drag to flying. The key was in the philosophy of ultra-low aerodynamic load. Ferrari almost completely eliminated the vertical resistance of the car. The rear wing was redesigned with a minimum rope and a practically flat main plane. The DRS system was optimized to the regulatory limit, with a reduced fin that prioritizes profit at maximum speed without excessively compromising stability. It was a radical bet that sought a single thing: pure speed. In parallel, the front wing was modified, adopting a more slender shape with less surface in the upper fin. This reduction of the downforce on the front axle was a necessary complement to maintain the general balance of the car in a minimum load environment. Ferrari even redesigned the rear beam wing with a single extremely thin sheet, such a minimalist solution that touches the functional limit. Everything was designed to fly through the lines of Monza without additional friction. But the most ambitious and controversial part of the package was the management height configuration. Ferrari opted for a tuning that placed SF-25 dangerously close to the ground. Because, to maximize the soil effect, that invisible force that sucks the car towards the asphalt and keeps it adhered even when traditional aerodynamic support is reduced. This approach allowed to maintain curve stability without sacrificing straight efficiency. During the first sessions, engineers began to detect worrying patterns in soil sensors. The aerodynamic load generated by the soil effect was so high that, even in compression areas, the car reached continuously. The data showed a wear of the plank that seriously compromised the legality of the car's car. The team had no choice but to go back. They adjusted the management height, uploading it some vital millimeters. This partially affected the soil effect, but allowed to ensure that they would not be endangered with a possible disqualification. The important thing was that the car remained competitive even with that commitment. It meant that the technical base of the package worked. That, despite giving a little in theory, the SF-25 was able to offer high performance with stability and speed. This change was not just a technician. It was also a maturity lesson for the team. Ferrari, historically criticized by precipitated or improvised decisions, showed this time an intelligent adaptation capacity. They knew when to push the limits and when to stop just in time not to fall from the precipice. And all this without compromising the confidence of the pilots. Hamilton, in particular, valued the effort. In multiple radio communications and post-session interviews, he showed his satisfaction with the balance of the car. He said that, for the first time in the season, he felt that he could attack without worrying about the stability of the car or the unpredictability in the braking. The message was clear. Ferrari had done his homework. He had risked as a few times before. And although not everything was perfect, they had achieved something much more valuable: to return to the pilot the confidence in his work tool. In a season as mentally demanding as this, that can be as decisive as any aerodynamic advance. During the sessions, Hamilton showed a domain of the car that had not been seen since the times he was undisputed in Mercedes. The precision with which the car placed in the rapid Lesso curves, the aggressiveness measured at the entrance to Ascari, and the ability to maintain control in braking as compromised as that of the first chicana. Everything pointed to a pilot who, beyond natural talent, had reached a point of harmony with his surroundings. It is not just about time per return or the position in classification. This is what happens between curves, how the car manages in areas where others suffer. And that was noticed even after receiving the penalty that relegated it to the 10th position on the output grid. His language speaking with the media was still positive. And the most revealing, for the first time in the year, he talked openly about real possibilities for the race. That is a statement with weight. It is not something that a veteran of his caliber says courtesy or to content the press. The Hamilton we saw in Monza was not simply the 7-time world champion. He was a rejuvenated pilot, not physically but mentally, relusted by the project, aware that you can still write new pages in your legacy. And now, for the first time in a long time, with a car that responds and a team that begins to believe. This does not mean that Ferrari is already at the level of McLaren or Red Bull on all land, but it does mean they have a pilot willing to take them there. And that, for any team that aspires to resurface, is the first indispensable step. Monza has not been just one more race. It has been an emotional and sports hinge for Ferrari, and above all for Lewis Hamilton. The type of weekend that does not change the past, but it does alter the direction of the future. Because when performance, technical innovation, and a pilot reunited with themselves are combined, the consequences can extend far beyond a single race. Ferrari, until now wrapped in doubts and confusion, has taken a step that can change the narrative of its entire 2025 season. And did not do so with words in the press or long-term promises. He did it on track, with a car that finally replied. With a car that ceased to be an unfinished promise to transform into a real attack tool. With a performance that challenged the predictions, which bothered its rivals, and that, more importantly, revitalized the team inside. But if Monza was important for Ferrari, for Lewis Hamilton it may have been transcendental. Because this circuit not only saw it rendered to the highest level since you saw red, he saw him enjoy. And when a pilot like him with more than 100 poles, 7 world titles and all imaginable statistics in his curriculum again find joy in piloting, the danger to his rivals is imminent. The emotional connect with the technical. And that, in Formula One, is a catalyst for results. Monza also represents something else, a real test. There is no room to hide weaknesses in this layout. There are no technical curves that hide a lack of pure speed. Here everything is measured in raw power, efficiency, stability. And on that exam, Ferrari and Hamilton passed the test. Not with honors because there is still a way to go, but with the certainty that they are building on valid foundations. The question now is not whether Ferrari can win a race this year. if the Italian team has found not only performance but identity, and if Hamilton, beyond the technical challenge, has found his place in this new stage of his career. From here, everything can happen. Ferrari no longer plays defensive. Hamilton no longer hesitates. The combination exists, chemistry is underway, and if it is maintained, it can become one of the most exciting narrative arches that we have seen in recent years.